Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to kick it off today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Tristan. Request Sound Horizon Interview with Noël. No additional context to this one, just the artist name and title. We're going to dive into this. We do have a really cool anime-inspired album art. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, it's 15 and a half minutes. So a bit of an epic with this one. As usual as these, if you need to, pause, get some water, a light snack, and get ready for a pretty lengthy video. Let's dive into Sound Horizon's interview with Noël. Noël. Okay. I love the light piano behind the more aggressive guitars. The guitars are mixed just a hair low for me. Very adventurous. Lining up the brass with the vocal was very nice. I love how we moved into this slower, more down-tempo section, and it feels so natural from where we were. Really great transitions on this group. Speaking of great transitions, we just railroaded into this one. Lovely bass work. Yeah, really fun rhythm there from the lead. Really nice transfer of the motif there. As much as I praise their transitions in like the first 3 minutes, they've just gone for harsh transitions since then. There's an interesting compression on this section. It's almost like some of these are separate songs, entirely separate movements, and our narrators like telling us the new chapter names, kind of. I love moments like this. See, pages being flicked, it sort of is like a book with chapters. This has a very nightlife feel to it. Okay, this is where we are. What?
何もかもが違う自由になる金もなく愛してくれる親もなく身なりはいつも汚く居場所などどこにもない俺はそんなキモいか人は外見だけで評価する奴らは全員クソだ弱い奴ほどよく見える影口の雨に打たれ神は誰かけんける邪魔するなら誰であれ神殺せ強い言葉は弱い心映す鏡のように
I'm so lost on this.
嘘をついて生きてきた本当のことなんて言えなかった惨めすぎてオルガンは粗大ゴミを一目盗み拾ってきたギターは年偽り悪いバイトでバイアウトエイジ軽蔑するかい惨めだろうそんな世界を壊したいと願った塗装が
That was a really nice transition. I suppose they do have a nice selection of both harsher and smoother transitions. Is this the same chord progression as Pachelbel's Canon? These jazzier sections come out of nowhere and I love them. They just don't really make a lot of sense to me. Yep. That was a fun way to get up here. I gotta know what this song's about.
October 26 and 27. Sunrise 10-year anniversary ファンクリベン聞いたことさえないステージ渋谷公会堂へオープニングアクトとして出演しないかとかさんに言われてる
It almost feels never ending.
世界を壊すのがいつだって俺たちの僕だろうああもし永遠を向こうで前が泣いてるならいつでも俺を呼べ
That was actually nice. Yeah, normally I wouldn't put the clapping in there, but I don't know if that's part of the song or not because as far as I can tell this isn't a live recording. What was that? Okay, so I kind of got on topic there of the song never ending. It feels infinite. And this is compound and personal. I don't know that everybody's going to have this reaction to this track, but I just felt like it would never end. When we were about 8 minutes in, roughly the halfway mark, I looked down at the time and saw we're only halfway through this thing. And I thought to myself, how? We've listened to so much music already. And it's one of those songs where I don't dislike any part of it. It doesn't feel lengthy because I'm not enjoying my time with it. But it feels lengthy, I think, because there is so much music crammed into it. For 15 and a half minutes, there's easily at least 20 sections in this song, maybe more. We are changing ideas, changing sections, changing movement, changing modes more than once per second. And the rapid fire changing of what the song is doing makes it feel more packed than it is, makes it feel like we've listened to more music than we have, and thus makes it feel like we've been listening to it longer than we have. Now that, paired with the idea that there really isn't any finality in here, and this is one of its... I think this is going to be a divisive concept here, and it's really going to be what separates this song from something somebody loves to listen to and something that bounces off of somebody else. None of these sections are crafted in a way and paced in a way that have natural beginnings and endings. They have all of them. It's a lot of music, so I might be forgetting something. But at least the vast majority of the sections are based on 4-chord progressions that are designed to be cyclical. We do have a type of resolution coming into the end of the progression, but it naturally moves back into the beginning of the loop as well. And so everything feels like a circle, and sometimes we just jump from one circle to another. And so the phrasing of the track itself is a bunch of circles, and we just kind of jump from one to the next, instead of having crafted sections that have beginnings, peaks, and denouements into finales. There really isn't any moment in here that feels like a section ends, it just becomes something else, whether that is a smooth transition, like some of the opening 3 minutes where we naturally took ideas we were in and modified them, reworked them into something for the next section, or just smoothly layering things up until we reach a new sound. Even those moments that have more fluid movement between ideas are still rather cyclical. And nothing really has an arc to it. Rising intensity and falling in intensity. We're just always at the same intensity for a section. And so while the overall song has an ebb and flow to it, it has peaks and it has valleys, each individual section doesn't. And since they just kind of loop into the next, you just kind of feel like you're on a track that's always moving forward. This feels more like a roller coaster than a story, is what I'm getting at here. It's an extremely fun ride to be on, but it's kind of missing basic pacing of narrative. And when I say narrative, I don't necessarily mean linguistic storytelling. Music by itself can tell a story as well. And this story is just forward momentum all the time. And so the consistency of, or I should say the lack of, any sort of finality to moments. We just sort of go somewhere else when we're done with a section rather than taper anything off. Makes it feel like the song can go on forever. Even our final 30 seconds of the track don't really feel like they're going towards an ending. It sort of just feels like we find a moment to stop. And we do. And nothing really leads into it. I'm not going to judge a band based off of one song. I think that's ridiculous, but at least this track in particular, it feels like they just don't know how to write an ending to anything, so they just don't. They throw 20 plus sections together with no endings, and there's an infinite feeling to that. Especially once we look at the larger picture and there's callbacks and full-on copies of ideas we explored earlier repeated at the end. It almost feels like the concept as a whole has been put on loop as well. And it's not just the little loops are on, but we revisit full sections that we did from the beginning of the track towards the end, and it feels like we've looped back in on ourselves. The little loops have taken us into a bigger loop, and we wound up right where we are. And it feels so infinite because of that. And when you pair the lack of endings with the sheer length and density of this track, it feels like it just never ends. And that was where I was feeling about 9 minutes in, just a general fatigue setting in, which kind of sucked because it's not like I didn't enjoy this. There's a lot of sounds and sections in here that that I accidentally that I actually groove with. I love so much of what they're doing with this. The sounds in general are just sweet to my ear. But there's just too much of it without any phrasing that really drags me down. It makes the listening difficult. It provides hurdles to it that I don't think it necessarily needs. However, on the flip side, it could be that this is all artistically intentional, and it's possible when we hit the lyrics, this all makes sense. Maybe it's tied to something that makes it make sense. I don't know. This is a very strange track. Um, and I think not knowing who Sound Horizon is just makes it a little stranger. I have even less context to put it into. But yeah, it was a difficult first listen, despite not really disliking any of it individually. So, speaking of some individual ideas, um, this track is all over the place. I'm not going to cover everything, but generally speaking, I really loved the vastness of this. We had some more driving prog metal sections reminiscent of the more accessible Dream Theater style of prog. Um, we have these beautiful classical rock sections, symphonic metal sections. There we go. Um, Providing this really great orchestral composition alongside generally rock instrumentation and sound. Um, we actually started off with a lot of this, and I felt a little bait and switched because I thought this was the direction we were going. The orchestration was phenomenal. I loved the use of horns and strings and woodwinds in I was going to say proper, in the traditional ways of using them. They weren't just chordal uh, sound candy, ear candy on the periphery of the song. They were participating and complementing in the composition. And I really enjoyed that. And I thought that's what we were going to get. It's just really strong symphonic rock metal stuff. And those instruments were sparsely used. A lot of this stuck with more of the core rock and metal sound. There was an organ that showed up more frequently than everything else. That's not to say that we didn't hear any of the orchestral instruments again, just that they popped up sparingly after the intro. That was a bit of a letdown. But having a full orchestra in in the jazzier sections would have felt out of place. So, it really is about knowing what you need for a section and utilizing it, which of course is something I've spoken positively about in the past. The idea of having so many instruments at your fingertips that you can tell some instruments just to not play at times, and that's one of the benefits that classical music tends to have that rock and metal doesn't, because rock and metal assigns one instrument to one idea. If you tell your basses to take 16 bars of rest, you just don't have a lower end sound for a section. Like it's just, it doesn't work with such a small group of instruments. So that's usually a positive for me, and I think it still is a positive here because it creates a ton of timbre variety and timbre layering variety throughout the track. It's just that I really liked the opening sounds, and I wish we could have had a nice 16-minute epic, symphonic metal epic. It's just mismatched expectations. But I got over that quickly. Um, but yeah, so I guess where I'm going about with all this is that the first thing that I wanted to bring up regarding them is that they are experts at crafting so many different sounds and styles. There's so much going on in here. There's jazz, there's rock, there's metal, there's symphonic, there's Baroque written stuff, there's jazz written stuff. It isn't just about evoking the sound of it. Hey, we have a sax in here now. Isn't that jazzy? No, like the writing was legit swing. We had legit Baroque sections in here. We had rock and metal composition. We had more of a modern impression, not impression, like a modern Renaissance style of symphonic writing as well. There's just so many different styles of music and so many instruments in here, and they were all composed for properly. It wasn't just a surface level feeling evoking the style. They legitimately composed it well. And so the composition chops here is put on display rather well. I'm not sure about the performance side because I don't know who plays in this. It's quite possible that a lot of the wider orchestration ended up being virtual instruments. Um, Everything sounded good, nothing sounded wrong, but there's a lot of instruments here. And depending on how many people are in the band, it's probably easier to do some virtual stuff than try to have an orchestra tour with you, as has been pointed out to me in the past when I've wished that bands could do that. The second thing that stands out to me is the presentation of all of this. Part of this is going to be the production, which is odd. I got used to it over time, but the guitars at the beginning were mixed really low. Some sections were hyper compressed in a way that felt strange compared to the more open areas. It's like the sound sphere was fluctuating based on what each section needed, which made the whole song feel volatile in a way that I don't really think I've heard much of before, and I've never talked about a song feeling volatile. So yeah, they gave me a way to describe a song I've never done before. That's neat in and of itself. But it just lends itself to the fact that this feels like a smorgasbord of ideas smashed together haphazardly rather than a crafted 15-minute epic. And when you mix the repetitiveness, the loopness of it all with this fluctuating sound sphere in production, it just doesn't feel like a cohesive whole. And it ties into the fact that I was talking about earlier about everything sort of being looped and feeling longer because of that, and no concept of pacing, right? It's just we're in this section until that section until that section. Um, it feels like a series of ideas with often enough even harsh transitions between them. It's just really accentuates the fact that everything is sort of disparate. So the production doesn't really help with tying it all together either, and maybe it's not supposed to because the presentation is book-like. There is the sound of flipping pages often in this track, usually paired with the narrative vocal. A lower male voice, typically in English, saying V-Rock from the heavens or something like that, and interview with Noël, and other lines that I probably missed. They feel like chapter titles. I did notice they begin to be repeated towards the end. They felt less like unique chapters by the end of the track, but still around the middle of the song, I felt like they were mostly unique titles here, and it felt like skipping around a book. But also, it sort of felt like an interview. See, the thing is with interviews is it's a collection of questions, usually about the past, particularly if it's an artist. How did you go about making this album? What were your influences? What did this song mean? It's all about what you've done already. And so a lot of interviews end up being vignettes of a series of vignettes about the creative process itself. Even if we interview somebody who isn't an artist, and they're just wildly popular for whatever reason, it's not about what they're going to do, it's not about what they're doing now, but it's about what they've done. If you interview a director or an actor, how was it on your last film? What was some stuff you had to do to prepare for it? And so a lot of interviews in retrospect are, not in retrospect, just I'm coming to understand it this way now, is a series of vignettes, and they don't have to be connected. The stories themselves are self contained, their connections are entirely through the questions of the interview. Without the questions themselves, we have a series of stories that don't seem to be connected at all, and you're curious how they were smashed together. What odd choices made somebody decide to think that these two stories should be in the same span of a discussion? It's the questions from the interviewer that tie them together. And so if we don't have them, that's sort of what this ends up feeling like. It's a series of vignettes that don't always tie together. Some of them do smoothly move into one another, but not all of them do. And that's what I mean the presentation is important here. I don't know what this is about. I wager there's going to be a lot of lyrics, and I gotta translate them. It's going to take me a while once I pause this to come back. I mean, for you guys, it's going to be a split second, but for me, I'm probably looking at 15 minutes of translation and interpretation and reading and trying to figure out how to tie it all into the music. But just on a musical level, the song itself does feel like an interview in a certain perspective. From an artistic direction, I think it's an interesting way to go about crafting a song. From a casual direction, I still find that the song is just a hair bit too disjointed to really enjoy, given the length and composition style. It makes perfect sense if it is done from the perspective of an interview, but it creates hurdles in the listening experience. I'm glad I've heard this once. I don't know that I would put this on again, but it does make me want to check out more from Sound Horizon. They do so much of this well that if they ever decided to make a song, I don't know. Maybe they have 3-minute songs. Maybe everything is 15 minutes. I don't know anything about them. But if they decide to make any song that's a bit more focused on a singular idea and telling a singular story within 3, 5, even 10 minutes, I think I'd really be down for it. This song in particular, though, is just a bit too disjointed for me to really get into. But again, I think from an artistic perspective, it's completely warranted, and there's nothing I would do to change it. Um, I think the last thing I just want to touch on, again, this is incredibly dense. I'm not really going to get into any depth here, I think, but everybody's just really great at their job. The bass work is sick. A lot of it is walking the bass line, playing foundational stuff, playing pedal tones here and there. There are a few really nice bass lines, but they tend to be a bit more hidden in the mix. There are two, I think, moments where the spotlight is put on the bass and the tone, the picking style, the just all of the way that it's played, and then of course what they play, which both of the times they got the spotlight was a really quick lick, very precise. Um, it's just it's solid bass work. The guitar work, we had a couple solos in there. We had some melody lines, chordal work, rhythmic and textural stuff, just killing it every time. The pianist is just gorgeous. Probably a keyboardist because there's a lot of tones that come through that are keyboard adjacent. We have a more traditional keyboard sound. We have an organ sound. We have some synthesizer stuff going on in here. Beautiful range all over the place, just really adapting to each specific each specific movement's needs, whether it's a more flourishy kind of swung jazz or a fast shreddy kind of thing going on in one of the more metal sections with like a nice organ sound. Just kind of vamping on some chords sometimes. The keyboardist just has it all. Oh man, and the very flowery classical playing that they have, very ornamental, lots of grace notes all over the place. Just like I said, versatility. That is what the keyboardist means to me. The drummer, again, versatile. Tons of grooves, tons of styles. All of them fit exactly what the sections demand. I'm probably missing some people. The vocalist didn't have a lot of variety per se, but their vocal style was adjusted on a more granular level to fit each of the sections. I think it was impressive that without changing too much, I didn't really hear any grand gestures here. They fit within most of the styles they were playing. I wouldn't say that the vocals ever felt out of place, so I think that's interesting too. And like I said, there's probably some more granular, minute alterations they're making in order to better fit some of the styles than others. Um, like I said, there's a wider instrumentation too. Again, I don't know how much of this is virtual and how much of it was performed, but I love the usage of the expanded auxiliary percussion. There's some cool shaker ideas in here. There's bells, chimes, I think, in places. Um, some hand drums, and then of course the whole orchestral stuff was great. I wanted more of that because it was done so well. I'm gonna hit some lyrics, and like I said, I'll be back in half of a second for you, but gonna be a bit of time for me. All right. Here's the interesting thing. So those chapter titles given from the narrator are actually more of like the radio DJ. What he says every time is interview with Noël from Heavy Edge. Sometimes just saying Heavy Edge. Later on, though, we have an interview with Noël from Sound Around. And later on, once again, we have another interview from Heavy Edge, and then we have an interview with Noël from V-Rock Heaven. And it seems like the song is just a bunch of interviews from Heavy Edge, V-Rock Heaven, and Sound Around. It looks like we have two interviews from all of them and a third from V-Rock Heaven. What's more intriguing is that the lyrics themselves don't feel like they lend themselves to singing at all. Everything looks like a transcription of an interview. to begin with, the very first thing we hear after the opening narration of Interview with Noel from Heavy Edge says, bringing you niche and edgy news through the web, this is Shibukawa Eiji from Heavy Edge. Good to meet ya. Man, Vanistar is such a thrill. Like being struck by the god of thunder, being electrified by his thrilling thunder. You given us these rock numbers overflowing with awesomeness. But how did you feel when you met the mysterious music producer Revo? Oh, everything was awful. Before I knew it, I was alone, looking up at the stars. The midwinter moon was white, as if it was frozen. In the darkness, the black figure of a man was watching me. Well, what an amazing meeting. Hey, are the rumors that our buddy Revo came from another world for real? And it just goes on like this for the entirety of the track. There are three distinct interviewers. The interviewee seems to be a similar person. They are all this Noel, apparently. And nothing here comes off as poetic in any way. It is all straight speech and at times even straight transcription. One stanza it says, I've listened to your music, the man said. Your irritation has grown too great to be denied. Why don't you let why don't you try putting the irritation into a song? The man went on. It's a story, but it's sung. And I'm really curious. I would love to know Japanese, I think. Yeah, I do believe this is Japanese. I'd love to be able to understand it and kind of hear where they're going with this because my brain just isn't making a connection with these two. The lyrics look like they should be spoken. Uh, the most musical I could understand them is rapped. I just can't come to a feeling that any of this was sung. It's so foreign to the way that lyrics tend to be written. It's just, it blows my mind. Okay, so I think here's another side to this. Does anybody know of a song sung in English that does something similar? So I could at least get the effect of this. Hearing an interview and hearing people talk and ask questions and respond to them, but all of it sung through a singular voice. I don't know, like it just sounds weird to even ask. Like, no one has ever done that. Like that would be my initial response. I've never heard anything like that. Of course not. It's why would that even work? But it apparently worked here, and I don't know if it's a linguistic thing, sorry, a language thing that is making it more palatable to my ears. It feels more like a song because I don't understand what he's saying. I don't know. It just feels a bit strange. Anyways, this is like I said, 6, 7, 8 interviews here. Um, Very condensed, I would say. But otherwise, that's what this is. We get a series of vignettes from Noel talking about this thing that happened this one time and this person that he met this one time and how school was like growing up. It fits in with my read of the music a bit closer and maybe a bit too exact, more exact than I thought it would, because honestly, the concept of literally singing interviews never cropped up in my head. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested, animelyrics.com has it. If you just search for Interview with Noel lyrics on a web search, it's pretty easy to find. Who is this Noel? Is this a made-up character? Is is the album a concept album? And this is a part of that. It might make more sense in that context. Regardless, I don't really have much else of a read on it. I don't think that the words and vignettes themselves are too interesting to bring up and dig into. There are a lot of them. I mean, this is just, I don't know, man. There's thousands of words here. But I would probably say that most of the emotions that the vignettes go through, that the answers and stories that Noel speaks of probably line up with the musical elements as well. And it's sort of soundtracking an interview, whether the interview is real or fictional. It feels like the interview came first and the music was done to embellish it, to soundtrack it. And the idea of soundtracking a interview just sounds odd as well. Um, so yeah, this was interesting from beginning to end. The minute I hit play until now, I'm very intrigued by the whole concept and execution of this. Those are my thoughts on Sound Horizon's interview with Noel. Let me know your thoughts, opinions, perspectives, if you enjoyed it, if you have anything to add to it. I feel like I had more questions coming out of this one than answers for anyone. Um, I'd say for most of it, I'm in the same boat as y'all. It was really interesting to listen to, but I honestly don't have much of a clue as to what is going on here. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion on this one. The comment section, I hope, is going to be very good. Above the comments in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. We do have one more special selection today. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to be checking out a full album. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.